Hello my babies, it is Saturday and that means it's time for me to review an episode of an animated series, and today I am talking about the Batman the Animated Series episode The Last Laugh. As you might have guessed, this episode features the Joker, who is the first villain to appear multiple times in the series so far. It's kind of a shame that the people behind this show felt they had to go to another Joker story so soon in the series when there are many more villains who we know in retrospect they will do a fine job with. But as I've said before in these reviews, the order these episodes were made in is not the order in which they were aired or presented on the DVD box set. So I guess my gripe about seeing more Joker before getting, say, the Mad Hatter, Scarface, or Clayface is a little bit invalid. The plot of the episode is pretty simple. This is not an insult, mind you. My creative writing professor always said, keep it simple, stupid. And in this case, that is a maxim that worked out very well. It's April Fool's Day in Gotham, and the Joker has a boat with some sort of chemical spreading insanity across the riverside of Gotham. Joker and his henchmen are taking this opportunity to steal from the people who are incapacitated by their own laughter and are thus too busy to protest when someone takes their purse or turns them upside down as hundreds of dollars fall out of their pockets. It is interesting to wonder just what Joker's goals are here. I think it's safe to assume that the henchmen working for Joker are in this for the money. They steal from people on the street who are in proximity of the gas, and also they somehow knew that an armored car carrying what looks like millions of dollars in gold would crash into the river for them to plunder. But what does the Joker want? It's entirely possible that he needs lots of money for a future scheme that he's planning. It can't be cheap to buy a robot that will pilot your boat for you. But I think really the Joker's motivations here aren't much different than what they were in the Dark Knight film from 2008. While that film chose to spell out Joker's modus operandi for us, this episode, The Last Laugh, gives us basically the same Joker in a much more subtle way. Another thing my creative writing professor used to say is, show, don't tell. We don't have to be told that some people just want to watch the world burn in this episode. We are shown Joker's actions, which, if he is left to his own devices, will cause permanent insanity to whoever is near the gas that he is spreading. Summer Gleason does mention that the antics of the people affected by the Joker's gas will likely cause the stock market to crash. In fact, I probably wouldn't have even been spending so much time talking about the Joker's goals if Gleason hadn't mentioned this. This episode succinctly gets the Joker across just perfectly in just 22 minutes, while also having room for Batman to have his own little character arc. Dang, no wonder people love this series so much. Batman's aforementioned character arc is actually pretty similar to what he went through in Christmas with the Joker. In that episode, Batman is learning the meaning of Christmas, with Robin being the guy who is telling him to lighten up a little bit. If you recall, in my review of Christmas with the Joker, I said that Robin seemed unnecessary and that Alfred could have filled that spot very easily. Well, in this episode, Alfred does fill that spot. But instead of the meaning of Christmas, Batman must learn the meaning of April Fool's Day. After we see Joker beginning the villainy of the episode, at Wayne Manor, we see Alfred pulling a harmless April Fool's joke on Bruce. We see that Bruce is not amused, but we don't have time for that, because Batman has to go and stop the Joker from watching the world burn. From this point forward, we see Batman try to stop the Joker, he gets in over his head, and then he comes back for a rematch, this time persevering. It's pretty much what you would expect to see in a 22-minute episode. But again, I am not dissing this episode. This is maybe my favorite episode of the series so far. We get the perfect Joker, Batman gets an arc, don't worry, I'll get there, and we don't have any detective Batman. I've said before that Batman being a detective doesn't work for me unless the detective work is especially brilliant. This is because Batman's claim to fame is that he's the world's greatest detective. And unless the writer writing Batman is brilliant and is capable of writing detective work worthy of the world's greatest detective, then it usually comes off as really lazy, like when Batman's computer is the actual brains of the operation, or the detective work becomes a convoluted web of what the heck, and Batman is somehow able to decipher it when there are literally no clues or anything that would allow the audience to follow along. This episode avoids all of that by ignoring the detective aspect of Batman. He hears on the radio that people are laughing, It wouldn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out that the Joker is behind this. Larry Holmes could have figured that out. Thank you, Fletch Lives. That joke is not mine. And so the adventure is off. I know that 22 minutes is a very short amount of time and doesn't leave the creators of this show with much room to do mysteries that are potentially solvable by the audience while also feeling worthy of Batman. But when an episode like this one does so well without even attempting the mystery stuff, I think that means that they no longer have an excuse when they do an episode that is weakened because Batman doesn't do the detective work. Before I finish up talking about this episode, I want to say I absolutely love that the Joker has a robot henchman and it isn't even explained a little bit. I am not being sarcastic, I think this is fantastic. Up until now, we've had mostly low-key stuff that Batman had to deal with. The Joker and the Scarecrow are both things that are, for the most part, pretty easy to believe could exist in the real world. The only thing we've gotten that feels very surreal at all is Man-Bat in the first episode. But this episode gives us a robot henchman, Captain Clown, and we don't find out where it came from. This doesn't even bother me a little bit, as I said. For one thing, this expands the world of the DC animated universe just a little bit more. In retrospect, we know that this is a world with metahumans such as the Justice League, and so it makes sense that a robot henchman would be floating around in the criminal underworld and Joker might snatch it up for his own purposes. After all, if we can believe that a man can fly, why not also believe that evil robots are working in Gotham City? This doesn't take things as far as you might see them go in, say, Batman the Brave and the Bold, but that's fine. This is this show, and that is that show. They're both doing their own thing, and in both cases, they both work in their own ways. So, at the end of the episode, Batman goes through what are, if I'm being honest, some pretty unbelievable obstacles in order to capture the Joker. Joker throws some banter at Batman, which is to be expected, but what's this? Batman throws a witty line at Joker. That's new. And so, here comes Batman's character arc. At the beginning of the episode, Batman is too cool for school, if you will. He doesn't have time for fun and games or silly things like jokes. But once he's out of the lava pit, he knows that he has the Joker right where he wants him, so where's the harm in saying something a little bit funny? This, in a weird way, kinda reminds me of the ending of Batman the Killing Joke. While I never quite bought that Batman would share a belly-shaking laugh with the Joker after the things Joker did in the Killing Joke, I think the same basic premise is seen here as it is there. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, and if I am, well, that's okay. But the idea in the Killing Joke is that Batman and Joker are really quite similar. Both are men who had one bad day, but the thing that separates them is that Batman powered through his bad day, turned it into something constructive, and now helps this city and the world, while Joker's bad day crushed him so that there's no longer a recognizable thing about him as being the same person, at least psychologically so. Maybe I am reading too much into this, but it still seems like the same premise is working in The Last Laugh. Joker is actually surprised that Batman made a funny joke, and then when Joker nearly falls to his death, he wants to make sure that Batman will save him. Batman gives him a look like, well, and Joker has to press Batman to save him. It isn't an especially funny gag if I'm being honest, but on the psychological level I think it works. Joker knows Batman all too well when he says, "You won't let me fry, will you?" This episode ends with the conclusion of Batman's arc. While at the beginning of the episode it was Alfred pulling the harmless joke on Bruce, when Bruce sees that Alfred is upset at all the damage he caused while he was under the effects of the Joker's gas, Bruce turns things around on Alfred. This may seem shocking and out of character if you prefer Batman to be grim and psychotic all of the time, but not everyone likes Batman that way, or at least not that way all of the time. So this is a nice break from the "I am vengeance, I am the night" Batman, and it feels organic with what we've seen in this episode. So like I say, this is, I think, the best episode of the series so far. It's entirely possible that we'll get episodes that trump this one, and if we do, I look forward to watching them. And I look forward to talking about them here on this channel. And I hope you come back to listen to me talk about episodes of Batman the Animated Series, as well as other things I will review throughout the week. See you then.